There's this massive, almost universal trigger for childhood PTSD symptoms, and you probably have it. I think a lot of people have it, not just those of us with childhood PTSD. And if you're like most people, you've never realized it. It's a trigger that happens all the time, and it's hurrying. Hurrying. It's so normal, right? We all do it. We do it all the time. But when you have childhood PTSD, hurrying very easily turns into overwhelm. And though you probably think, well, it's not possible to live without hurrying and getting overwhelmed a lot of the time, there's just so much to do, right? But if you're hurrying, when you're doing your job or caring for your kids, it can trip you up and sabotage the most important things in your life. Because for people with trauma, hurrying sets off dysregulation. Now, no one ever told me this, but once I knew what neurological dysregulation was, and I started working hard to get re-regulated again, that's what I'm always teaching about on this channel, right? And I realized that hurrying was right up there with the biggest triggers like abandonment, getting criticized, getting physically threatened. I think hurrying is a massive trigger that nobody talks about. I have it bad when I hurry a lot because I'm always trying to do a little bit more than is physically possible. It's just kind of how I am. Once in a while, like everyone with childhood PTSD, I get overwhelmed and dysregulated. Now, if you don't know about dysregulation, in a nutshell, this is the core symptom for adults who had trauma as kids, and it drives most of the other symptoms. And everybody gets dysregulated sometimes. Most people can re-regulate themselves fairly quickly, but for those of us who were abused or neglected as kids, we have a tendency to get dysregulated more easily, and we have a harder time coming back from it. And what it is if you do a brain scan, brain waves that normally are operating in sync together react to a trigger. A trigger is like a thing that happens. It could be like a internal reaction to something, or a car almost hits you. So when we say trigger here, we're not just talking about like something that's upsetting. We're talking about it sets off dysregulation in the nervous system. So brain waves that normally are operating in sync together react to a trigger by going out of sync. They kind of go all over the place. And we get triggered by something. Something kicks off an emotion. Usually it's not even a conscious thing that anything has happened, but things start to get discombobulated in your body and your coordination. Your thinking gets scattered. Your mind might race. Your heart races. Your emotions might come out kind of, overly strong. And this is what you can feel when dysregulation is happening. But it's something that's strongly impacting your nervous system, which in turn drives a lot of functions that you can't directly feel, like your hormones or your immune system. So it can be very pervasive, these effects of dysregulation. And the trick of healing CPTSD is to be able to notice that you're dysregulated and then to get re-regulated as quickly as possible. So I noticed that hurrying and getting overwhelmed were huge triggers for me. And I teach about this in my Disregulation Bootcamp. And that's an online course I teach. You can always find it down in the description section below all the videos. Hit that little more thing so you can open the whole thing up and you can find links, or you can get over to my website, or you can learn all about dysregulation and re-regulation in my book, Re-Regulated. And there's always a link to that down below too. But just for now, I want to give you some tips on how to notice when the hurrying trigger is happening and how you can start to change that. So hurrying is super normalized in our culture, and I'm not even saying that's bad. It's just how it is for a lot of us. It's everything from trying to get out the door in the morning to driving in a rushed way, through traffic to get places, feeling like, I gotta get there, I'm late. Being late is also a trauma symptom, and they go together. So it's just getting overwhelmed with everything that you're trying to get done in a day. And it can definitely strike when you're helping kids or working with other people, stuff that busy people do. You start to hurry. It's a very normal thing. And here's the thing, most hurrying is necessary not because of society, not because of technology. We talk about that stuff, but really, what it's really from is more ordinary than that. And you know what it is? Are you ready? It's procrastination. It is. We all do it. Maybe you don't get up out of bed after the alarm goes off, or you don't get out the door or leave enough time to get where you're trying to go. Do you do that? I do. And what's one huge reason we procrastinate? Right back to the beginning, dysregulation. So it's a vicious circle: procrastinating, dysregulating, hurrying, dysregulating, procrastinating, and doing it again. So our minds go down that road easily, but our minds love a sense of spaciousness in time. So taking your time is wonderfully re-regulating. When is the last time that you took a shower and you stopped and you just enjoyed the feeling of the water? Or you brushed your teeth without feeling pressured to hurry up, spit it out, get it all done, do the blah, blah, blah. Rinse your mouth, wipe your face, hurry up. This pushing all the time can overwhelm your nervous system, and overwhelm all by itself triggers dysregulation, or it can. It just so happens that our minds love doing things with careful attention. But the PTSD in us feels scared of slow, mindful processes because the bad feelings might get in. Do you have that? There have been times when I stopped to think about why I was hurrying so much all the time, and the best I could come up with was that I felt like something was chasing me. And I gave a name to it. I call it a pack of wolves. It's not really wolves. That's not how I see it, but it's as if I have to keep going really fast or something's going to catch up with me. And funnily enough, when I sat in meditation and I imagined wolves coming to get me, and I just let it happen, nothing terrible happened. I mean, there aren't actually wolves. It was emotion, and that's what was coming to get me. And it was a feeling, usually sadness, and at the very worst, I might have had a little cry, and then the feeling passes. It's not actually so terrible. And if you can let that feeling kind of wash through you, you don't have to hurry so much. You don't have to keep running or delaying so that everything's time compressed. You can just take things at a healthy pace for you and for your mind. And sometimes this helps you get more done, not less. Going slower, yes. For a long time, I was running and I hurried. And in my kind of dysregulation, hurrying makes me start losing my keys and spilling coffee down my shirt or driving over curbs when I'm turning corners in a way that's not good for my tires. So in the end, I can end up running late because I'm hurrying. Now, one time in a 2-week period where I was intensely dysregulated, something really bad had happened, and I was really, really in my PTSD symptoms, but I drove away from the gas station with the pump still in my car. I did that twice, actually, and the people were in the gas station going, hey, trying to yell after me, but I didn't hear them. I was like lost in my head. And then also during that period of time, I rear-ended a truck on the freeway. And luckily they had like a stainless steel bumper. Like I stopped, I got out of the car, and they just like waved me on. They didn't care, but I cared, and my car was messed up. Rear-ending someone because I was dysregulated actually made me, guess what? More dysregulated. And that's why now that I understand dysregulation, I have a rule: no driving while dysregulated. In some ways, it's just as bad as driving drunk. And it helps make it clear how important it is to get re-regulated, to get really good at that. But like with the gas pump, when I did that, talk about brain waves going all over the place. My brain, the waves, it's like they were, instead of running like water, they're running over rocks, like rapids, just, and it's so hard when you're dysregulated to stay focused enough to do one thing, let alone a sequence of things like put your credit card in the pump, put in your zip code, pump the gas, wait, then take the pump out and put it back in its holder, screw the cap on, yes. And then also shut that little door that covers the gas cap, and then get back in the car and start to drive and go away and pay attention to other cars in front of you on the freeway and stay focused on the task driving. Like, it's a lot, right? It's obvious how important it is to be present for that. But if you've ever been dysregulated, you know exactly what I mean, how all of this can go wrong. You sort of are relying on autopilot, but autopilot's not working when you're dysregulated. So I had this spell in my life where that's what it was. Just things had gotten really hard, and I was under a lot of stress, and I didn't have a name for what was wrong. And in a way, I'm grateful for those times because, well, I'm grateful nobody was hurt by my driving at that time. And also because struggling like that propelled me to find out what complex PTSD is. It's the kind of PTSD that comes from chronic, ongoing exposure to intense stress, usually from childhood. And it was only 10 years ago I learned what it even was. And this is relatively new knowledge, and even your doctor and therapist might not know about it. Luckily, they're coming on board with it, which is very good news for people like you and me. When I'm dysregulated, I can't totally feel my body. I'll start bumping into, things, hitting my head or dropping plates when I'm trying to wash them. My handwriting changes. Do you have that? And the worst of it is I can't get anything done. When I'm dysregulated, I'm sitting there and I start a task and then I get distracted and I go do something else. And some researchers say that a lot of people who have been diagnosed with ADHD, which is what this sounds like, right? But a lot of them might actually have complex PTSD. The symptoms in some ways mimic ADHD because of that difficulty paying attention and staying on task. The difference is that with CPTSD, you can learn to re-regulate pretty quickly. And you might have to get re-regulated several times throughout the day, but you can come right back and get back to what you were doing. So to reduce the need of hurrying, I recommend using lists. Yeah, I know you thought I would say something much more exciting than that, but lists. I use an app on my laptop called Kanban Flow. It's Kanban Flow, that lets me type in things that I want to get done, and I can do it in columns that I've created, and I can color code them and drag them around and name the columns whatever I want. They're usually named for days, and then I have other ones that are for like new ideas for videos and things that have to get done for our taxes to be filed. I can just keep track of everything, and I look at it. I pay attention to this list, like in the morning and the evening, and sometimes throughout the day. I delete things, I check my board, I delete things I've completed, and keep checking, how am I doing? Am I keeping up with what I planned? And I tend to be a little overambitious in what I put on my board, but I'm okay with that. I can move it into the next day. My mind loves to do a lot of things, but even more, it loves order. And in fact, order creates more order in your life. So the more I work in a structured fashion, the less dysregulated I get. And then more time opens up in my day to continue to have creative thoughts or to be physically aware of myself and aware of time passing. So I can instinctively tell when it's time to get ready for something that's been scheduled, the kind of thing I used to always be late to. The irony about hurrying is it just ends up making everything take longer. So you do have time to slow down. Believe it, you have time to slow down. Slowing down creates time. And slowing down is really good for kids. You probably remember the feeling. Going slowly is why some of us like the kids' TV show Mr. Rogers so much. I grew up on that, very important to me. He was the master of slow, mindful actions. Or a lot of people like Bob Ross, the painter. You can go right into a state of calm, watching somebody do something slowly like he did with his paintings, talking gently about what he was doing with the happy trees. We know that complex PTSD can make it hard to process thoughts and feelings, and they literally get backed up in your conscious awareness. And there's too much going on in there. So when you try to find your keys or the address where you're going, these little things can just be too much. So we all feel good when we can tune in to a more natural pace where we can think and be aware and think through what's next. This is a state where we can learn. And you've probably had people in your life who modeled that for you and helped you learn. That's something worth being grateful for. The people who followed a natural pace, and it allowed you to find a natural pace. It's a little different for each person, but those people are very comforting to be around. You might want to just think about in your life, was there a teacher or a friend's mom or a relative who was like that for you? A lot of people use meditation to sort of tune in and drop back into their bodies and allow their capacity to pay attention to gradually well up again. And this is really powerful for CPTSD healing. You'll hear me teaching this in all my courses. It's the foundation of being able to heal. It's the first thing to learn how to do. When you're feeling overhurried, one thing that you can do is to simply slow down. Just drop to half speed for a minute or two. Like you might only need to go at half speed to just finish washing a cup or pulling clothes out of the dryer. so that you're not just banging around, hitting your hand on the edges of the dryer or dropping things like I do when dysregulated. Just slow it down to half speed. And when you do this, your movements send a signal back to your brain to come back from dysregulation and back into a regulated state. So if you can learn to do this around hurrying or anything that gets you dysregulated and frustrated, if you can change your dysregulation, you can change the course of your whole life. It's the dysregulation. That's at the root of so many childhood PTSD symptoms, including the health problems, including the cognitive problems, including the sense of loneliness and lashing out at people and feeling like you can't connect with them at all. Learning to re-regulate is the number one thing you can do to start healing all these other aspects of your trauma. So if you're wondering if you get dysregulated, I've got a quiz. You can just check what the signs are and see if it's happening for you and how much it happens. It's free. You can download it by clicking right here, and I will see you very soon.